Hi, I'm Meinu Vaid. At home I have a huge library, and I just realized that as I'm reading more and more books, I've already forgotten quite a few that I already possess. So I decided to pick up one of those treasures and go through it again to get reacquainted with my book. So here it is, the first book I'm going to review today, A Child of Her Time by Maggie Bennett. Now, this book is about Miss Bird, Phyllis Bird to be precise, and I found her surname very intriguing towards the end of the book because I can see why it was Bird because she's keen to spread her wings initially. So she's based in London in a little before 1950s, I would say. She's just 25, living with her parents, and is the solace of the parents who are grieving for their two sons they lost in the Second World War. So she's dying to spread her wings, but where she is placed, there is hardly any scope to do that. There's not much of a life over there. She assists at a school as a teacher. Then she decides to move to the house of a famous playwright in London. And that is when she's caught into this whirlwind of, these celebrities, and she happens to make the acquaintance of one. And that is how she gets around in a very different sort of circle, which took her away from her own loved ones. And not that she was at fault, but then she happens to have a child out of a wedlock, and then how she successfully brings that child up, overcomes all kinds of barriers in her way in those times. Her strength, her resilience, considering the position of women in those times, that is what this book is all about. So towards the end, the whole focus, suddenly shifts. This book is divided into three parts, and the first two parts are basically the groundwork, wherein we are made to understand what kind of problems people faced, especially women faced during those times when no birth control was available. What kind of effect it had on the women's lives? How was life after Second World War, when all that were left behind were orphans, widows, and young women with hardly any young men around? So then, once she has a baby, her life takes a very different turn, and she decides to get trained as a midwife. And that is when she gets into the thick of things, wherein she's instrumental in bringing about birth control and helping people accept it as the norm. Because people back then were opposed to the idea of birth control, and they found it was against their religious beliefs. So it makes for a very interesting read. I was pleasantly surprised that, despite it being all about people, their feelings, their thoughts and emotions, and the little dramas in their lives, so there was nothing big or substantial happening in the novel. Despite that, I enjoyed it a lot. So it's a fast read. It's not like you will read it and get bored, because there are constant turns and twists in the plot, which keeps you engaged. And the third part focuses entirely on how birth control came to be introduced initially, what kind of resistance it faced from various sections of the society, and how it got accepted towards the end. So this is what the book is all about. So a nice fictional book, but with a message. That is the kind of genre this book was going for, and I found it quite interesting. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, I happened to pick another book, but then I don't have a physical copy of that. And I saw that there is a movie based on that book. That one is called The Midwife. I leave it somewhere here, the picture of that book and the link in the description as well for you. So again, another midwife coming into the picture. So that basically is a memoir of sorts, written by, again, a midwife, and who coincidentally worked post-war in, again, London, East End of London. So again, it talks a lot about the kind of poverty that people went through, the kind of problems they faced in those times, how they, carried out their duties, so sincerely. And it all starts with saying that, a lot of credit is given to the doctors, but none to the midwives who have played a crucial role in the past. Now, we don't hear of them very often, but then they were the ones initially who used to be around when the doctors couldn't be found. So they've had a prominent role in the society. And this heroine of the novel, she lived with a couple of nuns. And initially, I thought that, it'll be very old fashioned and didactic to read, but I was pleasantly surprised to see again, it is divided to chapters wherein she dwells in each chapter on just one character at a time. And sometimes it goes on to have 2 or 3 parts wherein more descriptions are required or incidents have to be narrated related to those characters. So that makes a very interesting read. I must warn you, in both the books, sometimes, since it's midwifery they talk about, and helping people birth children, so it becomes very grotesque and very graphic. So everybody might not enjoy that, and it's definitely not for children. They will definitely not enjoy it. And even for adults, the ones who like to read about history, rolled into some kind of a fictional story like I do, and reading about people coming from various walks of life, how they led their lives in their capacities in certain times in various cultures across the continent. If this is like what your interests are like, then definitely you will like it. But then otherwise, people who like thrillers, adventures, necessarily, who don't have a taste for this kind of a thing or patience to read about people and their emotions, and who don't like to empathize much with fictional characters, they might not enjoy it. See, because the first book is entirely fictional and the second one is a memoir, so that is at least true. So it gives a very interesting insight about a couple of nuns that she lives with in the convent also. So that is also very interesting. I got to know about how nuns live, what kind of lifestyle they had. And, although we might assume that people wearing those kinds of habits are basically the same people, not even similar, but I was pleasantly surprised to read about their own individual eccentricities, their own distinct personality types, and their way of conducting themselves. So it is very different. So all in all, it was such a pleasurable read that I am already looking forward to the other parts of this memoir. And rather, I'm not going directly for it because I want to savor it for some more time, and later I'm going to pick up and go back to the series and complete it at some other time. So that's all from me. So see if you like these recommendations, or if you enjoy listening about it, and if you like to know about people across cultures, across the globe, at various points of times in their different capacities and professions, then yes, you can go for it. You might enjoy it. So with this parting remark, I come to the end of this review. Catch you soon.